pages or 5 pages?
Yeah, I'm just using my my laptop to bring everything up, so it's a little bit more scattered than I like it to be.
It's okay.
Okay, so we're gonna do the case study. Is it salesperson Bruce of ABC?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so salesperson Bruce of ABC is preparing an offer for his buyer client on a property listed with XYZ Real Estate. The property is on 93 Leicester, detached bungalow with a basement apartment. The buyer intends to move into the main floor and continue renting out the basement apartment. Buyer mentioned Tom that he wants to make sure that he won't pay GST on top of the purchase price. Following question 3 related to the scenario above. Let's see, clauses 3 notices and fax number. And number 1, when the listing brokerage represents the seller and the cooperating represents the buyer. Okay. So how would you have Bruce complete clause number 7 in the purchase agreement? What was your answer on that?
Number 1.
You went with number like A?
Yeah, when the listing. Yeah.
You would just leave it blank?
No. When the listing brokerage represents the seller and the cooperating brokerage represents the buyer.
Okay. What about for the GST though?
I don't get it. Which question are we?
32, the next one. How would he have completed the GST part? Because it is a resale, it's not a brand new home, right?
Well, included in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a resale home we always do included in.
Okay, no, so the first one, so number 31, that would have been A, right?
Yeah, number 31 is when the listing brokerage represents the seller and the cooperating broker represents the buyer. Because Bruce is with ABC and then XYZ has got the listing.
If it's multiple representation, that's a no.
Yeah, it's not multiple representation because 2 different brokerages involved.
Yeah, but I'm saying if it's multiple representation, you don't leave a fax number. Correct?
Yeah, you don't have to. Exactly.
Okay.
Most people, we don't even talk about fax numbers anymore. It's all email now, but you know.
Okay.
I know. When the textbook says fax number, I'm just like, guys, you have to update that. It's a little bit outdated.
I can't believe these are like notes that you've been using even for at least a year or a little bit over a year, 2 years.
Probably 3 years. Yeah, probably 3 years or so. Yeah. Yep.
That's good. Okay, so number 33.
So stated previously, the basement apartment in the property is currently being rented to a tenant. If Bruce leaves the present use link blank in clause 8, title search of the agreement, what effect would it have on the transaction? So here there's only one issue with this question. We don't know if it's a legal basement apartment or it's illegal basement apartment, right?
Okay.
Like we don't know that in this case study. It doesn't tell us whether it's legal or not. It just says it's rented out, right? So here, when we do number 33, what did you think it would be?
D.
D? Okay, so right now you're correct because right now as far as the question and as far as the seller, they're acting like it's completely legal to use it as a single family, right?
Yeah, because that's already the present use. That's what's happening right now.
Exactly. So that's what it is. So they're not showing us anything different. They're not saying that it's never been stated that it's a legal basement apartment because that's a key word that we're looking for to know that he can go ahead and still rent out the basement. It doesn't mean it's legal.
Yeah.
So almost all of these people that have basement apartments, they're like non-conforming They're kind of against the code per se,
So
but they only get called out on it if they get in trouble.
okay, so this question's asking what effect if he doesn't put anything in the present use,
Right.
what could happen like if he
It
goes
just
forward?
it stays exactly the way it's presented on the listing, like because when you have a listing for sale and there's certain basements that are constructed before like I don't know 1996 or something, and they've got the legal status, then you can state that it's a legal basement apartment. And in a question like this, it would have been stated clearly if it had been.
Okay.
But this guy already has a different use in his mind when he buys the property, even though it's a single family residence. He still wants to rent out the basement regardless.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the actual legal definition of what it is. It's still a single family residence.
Okay.
And then go over the next one, the one with Rudy Sanchez.
Or you're cutting.
Then the next case study.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is Rudy Sanchez is a salesperson employed with ABC Realty. He's currently preparing an offer for his buyer client on a property at 93 Elm Street, listed by XYZ. The buyer is offering $375. Check as a deposit upon acceptance, which is very normal. The buyer does not require any financing as he has enough money in the bank to pay all cash. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
The buyer is particularly interested in the property. It is a bungalow with a large unfinished basement, which means he intends to create a accessory apartment. Here you go, got another basement apartment guy. One of his friends has already agreed to rent the apartment when it's finished. The property is currently occupied by the seller, and the zoning of the property is R1 residential, which again is the same thing, single family residence, right? The offer is being drafted on an Orea form, which it should be. The copy of it is in the appendix. Answer the following questions based on the case study. So 34, what reporting obligation must be met by Rudy Sanchez and ABC Realty based on the financial details of the offer?
A.
That's right. A receipt of funds record completed with a deposit and transaction retained for 5 years. So now go to 35. What effect does the pre-printed wording of the agreement of the purchase and sale have on the buyer's plan to finish and rent out the accessory apartment? So it's still a single-family residential home. The seller's not making any warranty that he can go ahead and change it, right?
That will be.
Yeah. So you can go ahead and do whatever you want, but the seller has nothing to do with it after you buy it and take care of it and turn it into something else without calling the city. It's going to all fall on the new buyer.
Oh.
Right? So if you were the agent involved in this transaction, you'd probably put in a clause that says that seller and agent don't warrant status of future plans if they've already mentioned something to you. Because this is a cash buyer, so the bank's not looking at this agreement. So you don't have to worry about that part for it to get complicated. But if it was a cash deal and someone said, oh, I can't wait to finish this basement and turn it into an apartment, you would probably throw a clause in there and say, yep, seller and agent, we don't warrant any status of future use as an accessory apartment.
Okay.
Buyer will have to conduct due diligence, or you'll write it according to protecting yourself, right? Because now he told you something. So as soon as he tells you something, you got to do something about it to make sure you covered yourself.
Okay.
Okay? 36. The buyer's offer is accepted, and prior to closing, it is revealed that the seller of 93 Elm is a non-resident of Canada. So a significant amount of capital gains tax would be owing on the property. So usually you would tell the lawyer will usually hold back like 25% of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the norm in Canada. So in closing, the buyer can withhold the amount that is necessary to pay the seller's capital gains tax for the transaction.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice and simple. So that's usually the buyer's lawyer will do that.
Yeah. Okay.
And usually it's 25%. So in the United States it's 10%, and then Canada's 25%.
Okay.
So you know the difference between the two. You want to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Tim is a salesperson working with ABC Realty. His client Jane has been shown a suite on Danforth, 2-bedroom luxury apartment or condominium. Tim has prepared an agreement to lease a monthly rent and deposit of $1,750 There's a 1-year lease term. Jane signs the agreement and is faxed to the owner's representative, XYZ Realty. The owner counters the monthly rent to $1,800 and a deposit of $2,500 and adds a no pet provision in section or in the Schedule A of the agreement. Jane does not have a pet and accepts the owner's counter offer. Answer the question with the following information. Is there a problem with respect to the owner's respect to a rent deposit? Big time. Can't take more than a month rent. The rent deposit is allowed, but it can't be more than a monthly rent of $1,800. So it has to. You can't exceed the monthly rent as the deposit. It's just got to match itself. Number one problem, right? You might hear of people doing. Well, it's not going to come up in this exam, but in practice, you might hear of people doing like a non-refundable cleaning fee of like $300. And for a condominium, because the keys are so expensive to replace if they don't get returned, you might hear of a refundable key deposit of like $250 to $400, depending how many keys and what kind of condo it is. Okay. Jane moves into the condo and 5 months later buys a dog. Nice. The property manager, the owner the property manager calls the owner about the dog and demands that Jane remove the dog from the premises, and Jane does not comply with the request. Well, let's see what happened here. So for Jane moved to the condo. 5 months later, she bought a dog. The property manager told the owner about the dog, and the owner demands Jane to remove the dog. Okay? Does Jane have to comply with this request?
Yeah.
So Jane will have to comply with this request and remove the dog if there is a no pet provision in the condominium declaration document.
So the no pet provisions only really with condos? Like you can't do that.
Well, it's with particular condos. There's a lot of condos that allow pets.
Okay.
So if this scenario changed and this condo allowed pets, the owner could not force Jane to get rid of the dog, and he can't kick her out either.
Okay.
He can't do anything to her actually if the condominium allowed dogs.
Yeah, but so when it says that they add the no pet provision, so this is the...
Yeah, usually they can. Okay, you can always add a no pet provision, but that doesn't really do anything because, like, if you get a dog later, you didn't have a pet when you moved in, so technically you were abiding by the lease.
Okay, and then unless your dog's causing...
Yeah, unless your dog's causing bodily harm to other people or excessive noise, and all those things that like follow that list of issues. So let's move over to 39. Jane's lease expires on September 30th. The owner-landlord wants her mother to move into the unit on May the 10th. Gives Jane a 30-day notice of termination. Can the owner's mother move in on June 10th?
No.
No, because they have to do a 60-day notice as a bare minimum, right?
Yeah, obviously.
Because it's for a relative, and the earliest the mother could move in would be the 1st of August.
Okay, but there's another question like that similar with the so the landlord has to give the tenant 60 days, but the tenant only has to get 10 days to leave and has to pay 10 days rent.
Right. So this is, and then the 60 days was related to the relative.
Like it has to be like mother or son, like it has to be like a parent and grandparent.
Just a relative, like you can prove, I guess.
Any relative.
Yeah, any relative is fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's move over to the next one. Did you do the next one as well?
No, I didn't.
You didn't do it yet? Okay. All right. Okay, do you want to do this one on your own and then we can practice this one later on?
Yeah, I can.
Because that's better for you to try to attempt it on your own first.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so we'll do that one and then there's another one to follow, so you could do those, have some fun with that, and then we can come back and cover those. So it looks like you're making a lot of good progress with this.
Yeah, that's because all I'm doing is studying all day long. I've been leaving all my mortgage clients like hanging for the past
right.
couple days.
Well, you're doing a good job and you're retaining it really well. So.
Actually, before we go into the next one, I actually have a personal question about. I just want to know maybe you might have some insight.
Okay, do you want me to stop the recording at this point?